Picture this. It's 1971. You just picked up your brand new Chevrolet Vega from the dealership. The paint still smells fresh, the little four-cylinder is humming, and you have no idea that within 18 months, this car is going to rust through its own fenders, burn oil like a two-stroke lawnmower, and get recalled by the hundreds of thousands. And if that sounds like your uncle's driveway, or maybe even your own, then stick around. Because today, we're counting down the 4 worst and 4 best Chevys of the 1970s, and trust me, some of these stories are going to bring back memories you haven't thought about in 50 years. Let's start with the bad news, because every good story needs a villain. And the biggest villain in Chevrolet's whole history wears the name Vega. Worst number 1. Chevrolet Vega. Chevrolet built the Vega to be revolutionary. An all-new, ultra-modern subcompact with a lightweight aluminum block engine designed to fight off the wave of Japanese imports that were starting to eat into the American market. And on paper, it looked brilliant. 80% automated production, a sleek little body that looked like a shrunken Camaro, and a fuel-sipping 4-cylinder that seemed perfect for the gas-conscious years ahead. But underneath that shiny new sheet metal was a nightmare waiting to happen. That aluminum engine block had cylinder walls that would warp under heat because the aluminum expanded faster than the iron parts around it, which meant oil consumption that would leave you adding a quart every few hundred miles, coolant leaks that turned into overheating, and backfiring carburetors that made the whole car feel like it was falling apart from day one. And it got so bad that by 1978, the Vega's engine problems ended up in front of Congress. And that's before we even talk about the rust. These things would rust through the front fenders in a single winter up north, to the point where owners joked that road salt worked faster on a Vega than a blowtorch. GM did try to fix it. By 1976, they'd improved the cooling, added a better head gasket, finally made the 4-speed standard, but the damage to the reputation was already done. And to this day, the Vega is remembered as one of the most disappointing cars an American company ever put its name on. Worst number 2, Chevrolet Monza. Now, if you thought Chevrolet learned its lesson after the Vega, buckle up, because our next worst Chevy of the decade basically inherited all its problems and wore a nicer suit while doing it. The Chevrolet Monza. Introduced in the mid-70s as a sportier alternative riding on that very same troubled Vega platform, the Monza was supposed to be the stylish redemption story, a little sporty coupe with European flair that would make people forget the Vega ever happened. Instead, it ended up heavy for its size, underpowered, cramped in the back seat, and saddled with a lot of the same mechanical unreliability that plagued its cousin. Proof that you can put a new suit on a problem car, but the problem's still wearing pants underneath. Worst number 3, Chevrolet Chevette. And speaking of Chevrolet trying to answer the fuel crisis with something small and cheap, we've got to talk about the Chevette. Because if you were car shopping in the late 70s, you remember exactly what this thing was. Chevrolet's answer to fuel-efficient imports, and it absolutely delivered on the fuel-efficient part, but at the cost of nearly everything else that makes driving enjoyable. Weak performance, uncomfortable seating, styling that even Chevy's own engineers probably wouldn't defend too hard at a dinner party, and a driving experience so basic it made a bicycle feel luxurious by comparison. But here's the thing, and I want you to remember this because it's coming back around in a minute. The Chevette actually sold like crazy, because sometimes people don't buy the best car, they buy the car they can afford to put gas in during an oil crisis, and there is a kind of honest, working-class dignity in that, even if the car itself left a lot to be desired. Worst number 4, Chevrolet Citation. And rounding out our worst list, we come to the very end of the decade with the Chevrolet Citation, the front-wheel drive X-Body. The Chevrolet rolled out with enormous fanfare as the future of American cars. Smaller, more efficient, modern engineering to finally take on the imports for real this time. And initially, it worked. The Citation sold in huge numbers right out of the gate. But almost immediately, owners started reporting stalling engines, rear brakes that would lock up without warning, and transmissions that failed early, leading to a wave of recalls and lawsuits that turned what was supposed to be Chevrolet's triumphant entry into the 1980s into a genuine embarrassment, a car that promised the future and instead delivered a mechanic's bill. 4 cars, 4 cautionary tales. But here's your rehook. Because the story doesn't end on a sour note, not even close, because for every misstep Chevrolet made trying to survive the fuel crisis and emissions regulations of the 70s, they also built some of the most legendary, most beloved, most goosebump-inducing machines in American automotive history, and we are about to get into all 4 of them. So, if you owned one of these, or your dad did, or your best friend's older brother did, and you weren't allowed to touch it, get ready, because this is the part where the decade redeems itself completely. Best number 1, Chevelle SS 454. Let's start with what many enthusiasts still call the greatest muscle car America ever produced. The 1970 Chevelle SS 454. This thing wasn't just powerful, it was a statement, and under that hood sat the LS6 454 cubic inch V8, pumping out 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, numbers that made it the most powerful engine Chevrolet offered that entire model year. It had that aggressive cowl induction hood with a vacuum-operated door that fed cold air straight to the carburetor at speed, a blacked-out grille split right down the middle with a bold SS emblem, and sculpted lines that told everyone on the road exactly what kind of car they were dealing with before you even touched the gas. People called it the king of the streets. And if you were around back then, you remember that print ad line. In 10 seconds, your resistance will self-destruct. And honestly, for a whole generation of young men and women pulling up to a stoplight in 1970, that wasn't advertising copy. That was just the truth. Best number 2, Camaro Z28 right alongside it, born from the very same model year, was the second-generation Camaro Z28, and this is the car that a lot of purists still argue is the single best Z28 Chevrolet ever built. Under the hood was the all-new LT1 350 cubic inch V8, officially rated at 360 horsepower. But here's a fact that still makes enthusiasts smile. Chevrolet was actually underrating that engine on paper by something like 13 to 15%, because the NHRA had to rate it at 425 horsepower just to keep things fair on the drag strip. This was a real, honest-to-goodness racing engine, wearing a street car's clothes, capable of running the quarter mile in around 14 seconds at over 100 miles an hour, on skinny bias-ply tires, in an era before traction control existed to save you from yourself. The Z28 combined that engine with a lighter body than its big block SS396 cousin, giving it a kind of balance and handling that made it not just a straight-line bruiser, but a genuinely great all-around driver's car, which is exactly why, more than 50 years later, people still call the 1970 Z28 the best one Chevrolet ever built. Best number 3, Nova SS. Our third best Chevy of the decade takes us back to the compact class. Because muscle wasn't only reserved for the big cars, the Nova SS proved that a smaller, lighter body could hit just as hard. And in fact, dealer-modified versions built through Chevrolet's Copo program, and through legendary tuners like Yenko, took that formula even further, stuffing 425 and even 450 horsepower big block engines into that compact Nova body, creating cars so quick some of them ran the quarter-mile in the 10-second range. In a car that looked, to the untrained eye, like your neighbor's grocery getter. These were sleeper cars in the truest sense of the word, machines that could embarrass a full-size muscle car at a stoplight while looking completely unassuming doing it. And today, those rare Yenko and Copo Novas are some of the most valuable and sought-after muscle cars from the entire era, precisely because so few were built, and because they represent that classic underdog story that car people never get tired of telling.